Ho, ho, ho. Welcome back. Welcome back. Happy Friday night. Welcome back to Ribbon Candy Hooking, everybody. It is great to see you. I'm Deanna. I was just struggling with my green screen. Sorry about that. I think we're good. I think we're good now. It is great to see you. Welcome back on a Friday night. I will tell you, things are good to hear. Busier than a hornet, busier than a moth in a sweater closet, but pretty good. And best of all, I found a book that I have been enjoying immensely, and I've been trying to fit time for us to look at this book together. Here's a clue. Here's a clue. Where is it? Right here. I found this book maybe a month or two ago, and I've locked into it as like one of my all-time favorite books. It is this book here. It is by Lynne Stein. It is called Hook, Prod, Punch, Tuft. So I've got it behind me while we do this show. I want to look at this book together tonight, and I'll tell you, Lynne is in the UK, right? So this is a British book loaded with techniques. It's very technique heavy. This is what we're doing on cocktail time. I almost said coffee time. This is what we're doing on cocktail time tonight. We're going to look at this book together, look at the amazing projects that Lynne has put into this, look at the techniques. It's a heavy technique book, but man, the projects are amazing. It's a huge inspiration book. You're going to go crazy when you see this. The link to this book is in the description of this video, right? And I just have to say, I was leading into something with the UK thing. I've been chatting back and forth with Lynne. She seems so super lovely. And I said, you know, you should come on the show so we can talk about the book together. Friday night, I wanted to review the book on a Friday night because it's the biggest audience. And I know you all are looking for something exciting on a Friday night. And because of the time difference, it would be ridiculously late to be, you know, coherent in the UK, right, with that huge time difference. So Lynne is going to be on with us, hopefully in the next few weeks, to do a live show in the morning, right, so that that whole thing works out. In the meantime, before we get started, I want to say happy Friday night to everybody. I'll have one more sip. There's always a struggle right before I go live. It never fails. I have to tell you what the struggle was today. And then we'll get going with everything else. It is Friday night. I can't be rushed. I was just working on the computer until the 11th hour, and I was putting together the Halloween book, right, The Haunted Rug, putting chapters, moving stuff that had been proofread from folder to folder, and I looked up and I thought, oh God, it's almost time for the live show. I better eat something. This isn't a great story. I've got to warn you right now. So I went into the fridge and I saw some leftover angel hair pasta and I saw some leftover satay, like peanut butter sauce. And I thought, I'm not a marriage made in heaven for sure, but let's put these two together and see what happens. So I put them together and I started eating them like crazy. And then I thought, I wonder if either of these things are very old, because my husband was in the backyard setting up the trampoline for the kids. And I asked him, and he came in because I couldn't smell it. I couldn't smell whether it was good or not, because once something is covered with peanut butter sauce, everything smells like peanut butter sauce. And I had eaten quite a bit of it. And he came in and he was like, oh, that pasta is not good. So let's hope for the best tonight, because I just ate. He said, eat first, ask questions later, which is kind of who I am, right? I admit it. It might not go well, but let's see how it goes. I'm usually eating expired food. Hardly anything happens, right? We'll see. Oh, Mom, you are on. Happy cocktail night to you too. You have got your martini tonight and you are ready to go. You have one foot on a banana peel, a week away, and that is going to be so much fun. I will miss you. But travel safe. April, great to see you. Happy cocktail night from Illinois. Great to see you. Cheryl on Cape Cod. Strawberry wine. I love it when you have those fruit wines. I'm so jealous. Great to see you. Cheryl, my mom sent a picture of Cape Cod right now, and it looks like the cranberry bogs are bright red. Is that the case? I mean, this photo was like neon red. I didn't realize it was at this time of year. I thought it was at the end of the summer. I guess we're right there weather-wise, though, aren't we? It's still quite warm. Such a beautiful photo, Melissa. Great to see you. You are looking forward to this. I know you are, because you and everybody watching is going to find so much inspiration. You know, there's lots of books, right? Not necessarily rug hooking books, so it's always fun to find one. There's lots of books that we see in our travels, in our internet searches, but really this is a great big one, and it is filled with, sometimes technique books can be dry, do you know what I mean? not this one. This one is so good. It is very lively. It's very descriptive. You'll see what I mean. It's a great inspiration book. Deanna, you are the best to do this on a Friday night. It is nice. I was getting a little bit nervous because I'm chugging up to doing the thing, getting the book ready and all that. Magpie is to print now. Everything is coming together like at the same time. These things always happen. But for some reason, whenever we're together on Fridays and we're talking about rugs and fooling around in the thread, having some jokes, having a drink of wine, I always do feel better. And I'm so grateful to have this space together where we can talk about things. This might be making some unwanted noise. I'll have to be there. It could be all kinds of problems tonight. I'll tell you. The necklace is the least of them. But I'm really looking forward to it too, Melissa. Catherine, great to see you. Happy cocktail night. You had an early takeout dinner. General Tso's chicken. Oh, with hot sour soup. I love that. Diet Coke on ice for tonight's show. That sounds amazing. You love Lynne Stein's books. Oh, you already know. I also do. I was just going to remark on your soda, your Diet Coke. I have to say, I discovered at the grocery store peach and pomegranate, not together, two different ones, flavored Pepsi. God, is that so good? It's just crazy. I forgot that I don't like soda when those kinds of beverages are around. So good. Ryan, great to see you. Happy Friday from Fort Worth, Texas. Iced coffee and playing with collage work tonight. Ooh, peace and love to you too. Great to see you. Karen, great to see you. Cheers, my dears, on a beautiful late summer evening in Black Forest, Colorado. It's great to see you. Great, Ryan. That sounds perfect. Linda B, great to see you. Cheers, my dears, and happy fall, y'all. We are right there. We are right there. Gayla, great to see you. Hello to you too. And Dave, hello. You are having a cheeseburger, coleslaw, and hard cider. Got a glimpse of the Magpie Times 3. Amazing. I'm in print. Yes, you are. And it is amazing. It's a great issue. It's not out yet. It's about to be out. Might as well say right now, next issue is going to be, got to work forward to it because it sneaks up on you, doesn't it? And let's see, deadline wise. Now, what did Judy want for this one? She wanted, I think the 10th, right? She wanted the 10th of the month. So I think the deadline for the next one will be November 10th. Yes. And the theme is Marshmallow World, and that comes from that song, It's a Marshmallow World Full of Somethings. But it's one of those great, like, Dean Martin Christmas songs. It's hard to tell what the words are because when he sings, he sounds super drunk. Am I right? But yes, so Marshmallow World, which means anything winter, anything snow, anything winter holiday. Whatever winter holiday you celebrate, do a project, do something for the gallery, do an article, do something special, submit it, right, by November 10th. So Marshmallow World will be the next theme that functions as the winter theme because Magpie Times is a quarterly magazine. So let me know if you're planning something big so I can fit it into the outline. I can't wait to see what y'all do. And Leah, great to see you. Happy Friday. Oh, I'm always excited when you're there. Cheers, my dears. Michelle, cheers, my dears. Good evening to you too. Melanie, happy Friday. In Washington State, great to see you all. Oh, thank you. It is Camp and Kitschy. It's one of these bell charm necklaces. I've got 3. Joss was checking it out. She's very interested in the toilet and the abacus. So we'll see when she's old enough. When she's old enough to stop breaking stuff, then she can play with the bell charm necklace and maybe wear it. We'll see how that goes. When stars align, I have no cocktail, but if I did, it would be a gin gimlet. Oh, that sounds good. Good evening to you too. Super welcome. Great to see you. Gail in Australia, good morning to you. Happy coffee time just to you. Leah says, LOL, Godspeed with the funky pasta. I know it, right? It's such a classic thing that I would do. I do eat way too much expired food. It's because I'm always in a hurry and I'm always in the fridge and I just think, good enough. Yeah, it is a great diet plan now. I'm stopping with that. I promise I'm stopping with that. Cameron, great to see you. A pair of spritz for you. Great to see you. Welcome on Friday night. Very happy that you're there. Kathy, my buddy, TGIF to you too. Happy Friday. Oh, that all sounds great. And Wendy, you logged on. Hello. I've got Patchwork Owl. I've already worked it into the chapter and it looks absolutely beautiful. It looks beautiful. But owls for a Halloween book. Oh, wait a minute. Maybe I have it. I have the other patchwork owls. I have the other one. I have Judy Phillips. So, but Wendy, you sent something that I already put into the chapters. Send whatever you have. I will take it. Wendy, it's great to see you. Show, but the dowel rod wouldn't fit in the mailing. Oh, you're going to mail it over for me to put up at the exhibit. That'll be great. That'll be great. So I'll just remind you one time, and then we'll get going on my on the book and on the content for tonight. The party, the book launch, the hook-in, it's all one thing. The big vendor event is happening on October 20th. This is at the Ribbon Candy. Should be listed in the description of this video, but also always at the Ribbon Candy Hooking store, ribboncandyhooking.com. The book event for the Haunted Rug book, right? So the book will launch at that party. Others will ship if you're not able to come to the party. I promise I will put the swag bags up as an item in the store for those of you who can't come, because the swag bag is filled with things that are quite different, and I don't want them to only be for people who can make it to the party, people who are local, that kind of thing. So that is coming up on Sunday, October 20th. Whew. I'm ready for it. I'm ready for you. I hope that you'll be there. Lots of tickets have been selling lately. I think there's still maybe like 20 tickets left, that kind of thing. And I know it's hard to buy tickets in advance because, you know, life is busy. You don't know what you've got going. Thinking about weather, thinking about other plans, thinking about conflicts, and trying to jigsaw everything together is really difficult. So far so good with tickets. There are still some tickets left. I booked the largest room at the Red Lion in Stockbridge in the Berkshires. So we do have a great space, plenty of room to spread out and do our hooking, to eat our tea sandwiches which come with the event, to visit with the vendors, right, to socialize and everything. We have plenty of room for everything. Definitely room for you. So hold on, let's do one more. Cheers, my dears. I also listed a new class. Did you notice that? I haven't done that for a while, but it's a seasonal class. I am going to get back to doing the straight design-like classes. Those are usually based on an artist or an art movement, and I love those, and we will return to those. But I wanted to try something a little bit different, Monty Python style. I wanted to try a class that was a seasonal sampler. So I'm calling it a seasonal sampler, and it is more for people who are not necessarily interested in doing their own designs, right? It is a design class, but if you feel like I'm not that much of an artist, I don't want to go out on a limb with my designing. I like primitive stuff and traditional stuff. I like to keep it simple. That's what these classes are more about, more of a primitive style. It will be a series of exercises. You will get a bunch of prompts. It'll be easy to do, easy to walk through. You'll end up with a bunch of designs, and I know you're going to love all of them because I'm going to give you tons of help. But the class does have a seasonal autumn/Halloween feel. And this is an online class that happens once and is recorded. So if you're not able to make it to the class, you still get exactly the same stuff, all the same content, the same slideshow, everything's still recorded for you in the same way. For those of you who are with me live, right, we just maybe talk more because we're live, but the class as a finished product, as something available, not live, and some people prefer not live because they're not super keen on interacting, understandable. That will be there for you for all of time. So that is coming up. That product went up this morning, and that is coming up on, gosh, I didn't, yes, I did. I put it on the calendar. Wednesday, October 16th. So that is called Prim Sampler Halloween Edition, and that will be a ton of seasonal fun for you. That is coming up. Also, our book classes, our book talk is coming up. Ooh, that's coming up soon, isn't it? This coming Tuesday, the 17th, September 17th, Indigo Girl by Natasha Boyd. I hope you've been listening to that. That will be a lot of fun to discuss. This coming Tuesday, the 17th at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. The Zoom information is in the Facebook link. If you're not on Facebook and you want to join that, send me a message and I'll send you the Zoom information. And that will also be recorded. So if you're not, I'm trying to move these book club nights around so, you know, different people can come, work schedules and time zones and all. So that will also be recorded. So if you are listening to the book and you're thinking, oh, I didn't know I couldn't make it on that night, it's recorded. So you will be able to watch it another time. It'll be there for you. I try to make so many things be there for you that are not behind paywalls. So you can have company, you can have listening, you can have learning, you can have inspiration. And that is a great segue to tonight. So I happened to find this book at a bookstore. I can't remember where I was. It might have been on, I think it was on Cape Cod. I saw this and I thought, wow, how come I have not seen this book yet? Hook, Prod, Punch, Tuft by Lynne Stein. Right, so it looks like this. Creative techniques with fabric and fiber. This is a UK book, so the language is right? Sometimes different sort of placeholders for the same thing, but we already know all the words for all of the tools and the things that we do with our hands, right? Because we're rug makers and we already have talked about all of these things. Herbert Press, this really is one of the phenomenal books of recent times. I'm not exaggerating. This came out in 2023, and I want to take a look at it. It's got many chapters that are divided up between, and we're going to go through it together, rag rugs, brief history, and then all of the different tools one might use, materials, backing cloths, frames, rug hooks, prodders, cutting tools, tufting guns, latch hooks, punch needles, needle felting tools, all different kinds of tools that you might use to make different kinds of rugs. Many of these things you can use, the techniques and tools you can use in the same project, right? We've been talking about that more and more, how nice it is to kind of open up the walls, right? And think about, oh, I like that, but I like that too. Let's put them together, right? It doesn't have to be so rigid as it was through the 20th century. We can combine things and create or work toward a sort of fusion of things that's more like a fiber collage than it is any one thing, right? So this book will help you with lots of techniques and fine-tuning tools and supplies and things like that. And then the making process, right? How do you do it? Lots of illustrations in this book, and they are perfect. Close up, not too many, right? You'll understand perfectly what's going on. Transferring designs, techniques, sampling, embellishing, dyeing, finishing, cleaning and care. And then there's a chapter on recycle, upcycle. A chapter on the creative eye. What are sources of inspiration when you're working on a project, right? That's a great chapter. And then there are a ton of projects, and they are all great. I'm not going to show you all of them because I hope that you'll be interested in getting this book. You will not regret it. This will be on your bedside table for a long time. And when you're half asleep, right, you want to put yourself in a good mood right before bed, you're going to be flipping through it and saying, yes, Lynne Stein, I love that project. That's my next one. It is that kind of a book. And then it goes into community projects, gallery. These are different sections. And then the last one is museum and gallery collections. UK, US, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and then further reading. So really comprehensive book. It is a good sized book too. Let's see about what the page count is. Just over 150. That's a good size, right? That's a nice fat book, right? It feels super worthwhile, very substantial. So I'm going to show you the introduction. Let's start looking at the slideshow. Hang on while I get sorted. All right, so here's the cover of the book. Hook, prod, punch, tuft, right? Creative techniques with fabric and fiber. And as soon as you open the book, you see this image that I think is so much fun. Gratitude Dolls by Trish Anderson, made in 2020, and they appear on page 146, but they are here in the dedication, page 2. As soon as you open the book, you start seeing things that are unusual, different clues into Lynne's world, how she got into this, what inspired her. These are hand-painted papier-mâché brooches that Lynne made in 1971. Right, I'm sorry the photo's a little bit crooked, but you can see she was a virtual assembly line of making these beautiful brooches. Love this, very stylized, right, very eye-catching. I would love to have some of these brooches to put on my jacket, right, for fall. Perfect. They're just so colorful and lovely, and isn't it always fun to think about and find out what people do besides rug hook or punch, right? It's always interesting because most people didn't come to this craft first unless there's a family member who was a hooker or a puncher, right? Because it's not super well known, right? It's not very easy to figure out what the supply situation is when you're coming into the first time without a teacher, without a guild, all on your own. Even with the internet, it's a little bit tricky to find out what you're supposed to buy and how you're supposed to get started. So most people came to rug hooking or rug making in general in a circuitous way through other arts and crafts. And for me, it's always fun to see what other people have done in the past, because it feeds right in, right? It always fits. It's never like apples and oranges. It always fits with what we're looking at now. It's fun seeing photos like this. Lynne starts the introduction like this. Now, I'm giving you a real sampling of the book because remember, Lynne will be with us, hopefully sooner rather than later, for a live show on one of our upcoming coffee times. And then you'll have time if you want to order the book, look at the book, you'll be able to log on and ask her questions directly. We'll do the split screen thing again. So I'm only covering bits and pieces of the book because I want to sort of whet your appetite for more, but not do a huge spoiler alert. It is a beautiful, lush, very highly illustrated book, and there's lots in here. Lynne writes, when the COVID pandemic took hold early in 2020, severely disrupting, restricting, and transforming our lives, we were confronted with the challenge of developing our own particular coping mechanisms and ways of attempting to restore some sense of equilibrium. Many of us were reminded of the basic human need for self-expression, especially during the periods when we were all locked down. It would have been hard to ignore the extent to which not only other artists, craftspeople, and designers, but hobbyists too, seemed to find solace in the act of making. It quickly became apparent on social media platforms such as TikTok, Pinterest, Instagram, YouTube, and on classes being taught over Zoom that many waking moments were being spent baking sourdough bread, sculpting pots from self-hardening clay, and expanding one's vocabulary of embroidery stitches, along with numerous other previously unexplored expressive pursuits. That is so true. That is so true. That's so universally true, too. And I was just thinking the other day, I was going through the photos because I was looking for some personal photos to put into some of my chapters of the Haunted Rug book. And I scrolled over like early 2020, right? It's March when everything started happening, and it was so scary and awful. And I don't like to look at those photos because it was such a dark time. The onset, right, was so scary. And I found some photos of Jocelyn, because they told the kids not to go to school. My daughter Jocelyn, I signed her immediately up for some online art classes. They cost a fortune. We were doing them almost every day because I felt like she was being robbed of time with other people and to learn interesting things. And she would sit in front of that computer, and I would try to have all the things around her that she needed for the project, but it never failed that something was missing and I didn't know, or it wasn't on the list. And there were a couple times that she got like panicked and a bit teary while she was trying to quickly put everything together and make it. And one time she was making like a little vase for me with that self-drying stuff, and maybe it was like a cactus shape, and she was sticking broken toothpicks into it, and her hands were shaking, and I could tell she was almost crying. And I thought, this is just not fun, right? This is just not fun. But it was a time when we all, I think Lynne is absolutely right, we all needed something and a way to connect. And we needed to hammer a square peg in a circle hole and figure out how to keep life going with crafts, with inspiration, with productivity, particularly if you depend on doing arts and crafts as part of like your personal therapy or your personal philosophy. It helps you get through life, right? And keeps you sane. So yeah, that is something I think that we can all relate to. And Lynne goes on to say, creative acts require being in the zone of playfulness, allowing ourselves to have fun, experiment, and also make mistakes. Science has proven that creative engagement and play have numerous benefits for our health and well-being. They have the capacity to calm and comfort, reduce stress and anxiety levels, improve self-esteem, inspire new ideas and ways of thinking. It is no wonder that during a global pandemic, many people around the world sought to engage in these essentially self-healing activities. And then I'm going to kind of skim down. So she's talking about her own practice for more than 30 years, and her enthusiasm for the medium of rug hooking comes from a variety of sources, and least of all from any claim to be a talented needlewoman. The medium's simplicity, its folk art culture, its inventive use of recycling, and indeed its social history, with its humble utilitarian beginnings, all contribute to its persistent appeal. It is largely because of this rich history that the book devotes several pages specifically to the craft, taking a look past and present at the many different techniques, designs, materials employed across both sides of the Atlantic. Is anybody over there? Arian? Joss, can you put my fan on across the room? Uh-oh. I think I'm fine. I'm just, whew. I hope I'm fine. Can you put my fan on, please? I'm struggling with expiring. All right, let's get that going. Whew. Let's see what happens. So great introduction. So she's talking about some of her earliest memories, much to her parents' displeasure, are of unpicking and trying to work out the construction of the candlewick bedspreads which adorned our beds in a style typical of the 1950s. Yeah, I mean, that's a sign of genius, isn't it, when you reverse. I'm just going to put the fan on. I'm starting to sweat. Thanks, Joss. Hold on one second. Never mind. I got it. By all means, remain seated. Don't you worry about me or anything I need. Oh, I'm coming back, everybody, I promise. Now, hopefully that, I know my green screen just took a trip. I'm just going to get rid of it because it's driving me nuts. So there we go. That's eerie, isn't it? Let me just do this. And I'll keep holding up the book so you can see it. Whew. All right, hang on, everybody. I think I'm okay. If you're watching late, I accidentally ate some expired food. It's the wrong night of the week to do that for sure, but it is so me, right? It's so me. All right, here we go. Let's stay on task. There we go. So sorry, Lynn. I'm a hot mess. You know, this is a great introduction because she's talking about the different crafts, right, that are related to her projects in this book, because the amount of techniques in this book is like unparalleled. We see a lot of books, we've reviewed a lot of books in the past where there are quite a few techniques, right, including my book. This is different. The technique, it's more than all of the ones you can name, right? You can name all of the techniques in this book, and then she's got a whole bunch more for you. And the idea is not that necessarily you're doing an all locker hooked rug or an all latch hooked rug. She's often doing projects that, as I say, combine a variety of techniques. And for me, that's what makes this book different, is it has that super bohemian feel, that fusion of lots of different techniques. The pieces end up utilitarian, right? She uses the word utilitarian. Though rugs are, these pieces and these projects in this book end up being very gallery, very artistic, wild and free, right? So beautiful introduction. But again, I want to leave some of this for you. Let's look at some of the inspiration photos that she's got early on. She takes us through, in the introduction, she takes us through some of the things around her that are particular inspirations for rug making, right? So for example, we've talked about this before, but not often enough and not lately. This is a well dressing, right? So the top of a well that's been dressed up with flowers, right? And this is a picture of the picture in the book. So, sorry, the quality is not better, but obviously if the book is in your hand, the quality is perfect. So this is a well dressing from Eam, Derbyshire, or Derbyshire. Hold on one second. Let me grab one more. Yeah, there we go. This is a neat one. So this is Dezesi 2 El Enutsui 2006. This is the title of the piece. 302 by 463 centimeters. Wow. That's 121 inches by 185. Aluminum bottle caps and copper wire. Wow. That's incredible. That is incredible. Gosh, you know what that reminds me of? I know I constantly ADHD. Do you remember that craft? It was from a long time ago. I think we were still experimenting when I was very, very small, but I haven't seen it for ages. Do you remember when people would get a ton of safety pins and they would put beads on the safety pins and then turn them into, for example, a lampshade or a little sculpture. Or, oh, Karen Garby says the book is available on Amazon for $20. I put a link to the book in the description of this video, so you can find it there. Try to make my background look good. As soon as that green screen falls, you know it's all over. But you remember those little safety pin, I don't even know what that craft was called, but I know I've seen lots of little vases and little baskets, and it looks like just a bunch of jewels, beads, things like that, and it's a bunch of safety pins that are holding them, and then the safety pins are attached together. Yeah, April says, yes, I have a clothing pin made out of that. Yes, yes. More recently, I've seen people do like a pin with like the American flag or something and safety pins coming down, right? And then they're beaded up and it makes almost like pixelated. It makes the dots in the red. That's another thing that reminds me of some of these things that Lynne is naming. You know, when you think about inspiration, you think about putting things together, right? Because rug making essentially is putting lots of things into one backing, right? And essentially you've got dots of color, right? And it makes up the whole image, the whole feel of the rug. There's lots of crafts that do that. It's not just rug making. So she's bringing us through some of them. Must have been an 80s craft. It was before, it was in the 80s, because I remember we went to a little shop and someone, like my mom must have signed me up for a class or something, and we were doing it. But I know when I've gone to antique stores, I've seen examples of it that are definitely like 1950s, 1960s. So it definitely goes back a ways too. You had earrings like that. Interesting. It's another one of those things that has an element of pixelation, or rather many pieces put together, right, more specifically, that can put you in mind of rug making ideas and techniques, right? So in this part of the book, Lynne has so many examples of rugs that are inspiration pieces. This is one of the Las Rancheritas. So this is the rug hooking sort of mission that is in Mexico City. Remember, we definitely did at least a couple of episodes on that. And we did an interview with the head of that organization too. So Las Rancheritas, and this is Auralia Mermaid, made in 2010. This is hooked wool and polar fleece, right? And the woman who is in charge of this particular sort of rug hooking enterprise is Charlotte Bell. So if you want to check out La Rancheritas too, also put in Charlotte Bell and you should bring that website right up. There's often rugs for sale there. This one called Auralia Mermaid is super, super lovely. Kind of humanizes the mermaid, right? There she is in her mythical glory, but she's in there with things that we recognize, like little turtle, fish, chickens, roosters, and a farm scene in the background. You know, this is, as far as I can remember, this is the only mermaid I have seen in a farm setting, right? So interesting fusion, really fun piece. Let's see what I got next here. Oh, this is another beauty. Women of Santiago Atitlan. Sorry, I've got my medium glasses on. Atitlan. Juana Yolanda Charnel Aju. And this is Guatemala. So this is one of the multicolores rugs. Absolutely stunning. Judy, that was a freshwater mermaid. Totally your kind of mermaid, right, Michelle? Yeah, these are both beautiful pieces. You know, this one, the one that is from Guatemala, the multicolores, this has the look, doesn't it? Because the multicolores rugs do a lot with the shading, right? The sort of incremental shading, a very graphic style of shading. I see like a Pokemon ball in the middle of this. Oh, it's a woman. It's a woman. Well, now you know I am over saturated with Pokemon in my life. I'm seeing Pokeballs everywhere. Now I can see it. I think I better switch my glasses out too. It's a woman standing from behind, and there are several fields of patterning in this piece that make it so interesting. Corn growing up over on the right, water at the bottom, a patchwork field of green, maybe a farm field, and the woman herself is super sort of fragmented and broken into patterning. What I really love about this piece, the more I look at it, the blouse on the woman, right? You know how the Guatemala style embroidery is very, the original embroidery, not the rug making, but the needlework is very sort of Jacobean in its feel, right? It's lots of uh, traditional sort of British motifs, and we're really seeing that in the breakdown of the shirt. It really looks like a piece of embroidery or something very old-fashioned. That's really charming because that's just the style of embroidery that they do. Great examples that Lynne is showing us. I particularly love this one, Barbecue by Ronald Vesey, Creative Growth Center, 1990, Creative Growth Art Center, I'm sorry, 1990. This is all hooked in wool. Love pieces like this, right? Great storytelling piece. Simple in its composition, but man, does this work well. Simple in its composition, but simple is hard, isn't it? It really is. So we have got the barbecue happening here. We have got the chef in the chef hat standing at the barbecue. That barbecue is really well articulated, right? That diagonal grill, perfect. Isn't it interesting and so kind of clean, fresh, in the right mood of barbecue, right? Summer barbecue, having that white fence in the background. Isn't that perfect? It makes it possible to really see the figures, and then still gives us a little peek, a little view at what's beyond, keeping it interesting. 3 different greens, 3 different hills. So smart. What a smart, really beautiful piece. And then Lynne goes into, after she comes out of the introduction, she talks about some older rugs. She talks about the history of rag rugs. Now, remember, let's make the distinction, right? Let's make the distinction. We're talking about, hold on one second. We're talking about rag rugs. And rag rugs in the UK, right? A little bit of a moving target for us definition-wise, language going from US to UK. In the US, we tend to talk about rugs in terms of, are they hooked or are they punched or are they something else? And we often dismiss the ones that are something else. In the UK, there has always been a long and started earlier history of not rug hooking, but rug making. Pradi and different techniques for making true rag rugs out of scraps. Typically rugs with very high pile that were made of thrifty intention, right? Thrifty materials, but were utilitarian for sure. So when we talk about hooked rugs in the U.S., although rag rugs hooked rugs fit under the category of a rag rug, for those of us who have the sort of hooking heritage of being American, we have always been a bit more persnickety about rag rugs, right? And historically, the earliest rugs in the U.S. and in Canada, right, the earliest hooked rugs were absolutely more related to the UK rag rug than to our modern hooked rugs, right, that are all done perfectly pristine, measured, and equally cut milled wool, right? That was not the reality when these rugs came to be. And the British tradition of doing these rag rugs is a bit looser. It's a bit more, somebody said it the other day, pantsy, seat of the pants. It's much more in keeping with the history of the actual craft. Ironic, isn't it? So Lynne has a chapter here called Rag Rugs, A Brief History. The technique of constructing a textile by manipulating loops or tufts, right, if it's clipped, through a woven foundation is a very old one. So the history here isn't hooked rugs, right, because we're going back to Coptic. We know actual hooked rugs using a rug hook as we know it goes to like the 1860s. That's the earliest we can place it. But certainly there are rugs using a needle that, right, go back to Coptic Egyptian periods, those very early eras. Lots of different tools in your hand to make rugs with piles, right, to keep life warm and a little bit decorative. So in this rag rug chapter, she talks a little bit about some of these older rugs. Oh, let me check that out, Karen. I have to check that. Your husband said the barbecue looks like it's levitating. I got to get in on the joke. Hold on. Let me get over here and see this. Oh, it does a little bit. It's not grounded. Isn't that funny? You know, it does have, even though this piece, Barbecue, even though this piece is from 1990, it has a mid-century feel, doesn't it? The shapes of the faces, kind of the Evelyn Ackerman type face, the simple sort of motifs, not grounded, right? Just the layering of motifs, the shape of the barbecue, and also the lid of the barbecue. Just neat shapes, little bit mid-century modern for me. That's how it feels. I just love the feel of this piece, the cleanness of this piece. The design is absolutely brilliant, and it is a great storytelling piece. She's holding up the stabby fork, like, I was just gonna say, where's the beef? Uh, Totally forgot about that commercial. Now back to the history of rag rug. So this one above is an unknown maker, 1930s, maybe 1940s, and this is courtesy of Maureen Morano, photographed by Robbie Wolfson. So this is a classic early commercial rug. This could be a Garrett Bluenose. This could be an heirloom. This could be any of the early 20th century commercial designers. It is a commercial design without a doubt. Um, it is perfectly symmetrical. That's not the mark of a commercial design, but I know we've seen this particular design before. I would also put it 20s to 30s, and the reason for that is because it has that sort of Macintosh feel to the roses. It has that Art Deco feel, right? It can't, unless it's an incredible coincidence, it really can't be earlier. This style of rug that introduces colors that were just becoming popular at that time, like white, like black, like dove gray, right? We think of those colors as just givens in our modern times now, but at that time those were not popular colors, right? The Victorians were not using white, gray, and black. They were using full blast, put your foot down on the gas, crazy color palettes, right? That were typically jewel colors and rich type colors, spice colors. So this is definitely, in my mind, I absolutely agree with the time frame. I would say 1920s to 1940s. I would have to look up this pattern and see where it first appeared. It is an interesting pattern because we are getting the three closed rosettes, so this is a super deco motif, but we are seeing the rosettes in conjunction with these really stylized leaves, right? That's a bit of a hybrid, right? A bit of a mutation, because we often see the closed rosettes in kind of a floral wreath, or we don't often see them against a backdrop of like sort of the red kind of bud with the green leaves on the side, with that kind of heraldic feel. That is a bit of a fusion, which makes me think it's on the earlier side of like 1920s, 1930s. And the kind of sunflower burst in the corners, it is still a closed rosette, right? Is that style of flower. Really lovely. And this person was, I would bet I don't want to say my life, right? That would be a hell of a bet. But I would bet a lot that this rug was hooked with one of those shuttle tools with the two plates that move side to side, tick, 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 right? I think it's one of those tools that made this rug. And part of the reason I think that is because there is such a huge attempt at directional hooking. Typically when someone's working with an actual hook in their hand, they're a little bit more fluid. We see more sort of a marble cake fill. When people were working with those shuttle tools, which still exist today and are still made new, they are exhausting to use unless you're more fit than I am. They are a little bit exhausting. It's hard on your arms, your back, the back of your neck to use them, but it is possible, and they do move fast. They walk across your backing. They literally walk across, and they find the next hole and boom, they punch right into it. It's a wonderful tool. It works fast, but you can't make a lot of pauses and give a lot of thought to sudden directional shifts. It wants to walk all on its own. It's like pushing a lawnmower that's getting away from you. So the fact that we're seeing this back and forth kind of thrust to the directional hooking in this piece says to me, also the age of this piece, right, says to me 20s to 40s. These rugs were often sold with colors, right? The colors would come with them, and the tool. People had the tool, whether it was the Aunt Lydia, or wherever they got that shuttle from, whether it was the Garrett Bluenose, whatever it was, people already had the tools. The Garrett Bluenose was more of a gun type of thing that you held. But they were all quite similar, and they all did a bit of walking, and they all worked at more speed, and they all were best with patterns that were fairly simple, geometric, and these kinds of florals, because you just could not get nuances and flourishes into a pattern using that particular tool. Oh, okay, hang on. So let me just come back to you for a minute. That was Lynn. She looks lovely, doesn't she? So the chapters look like this, just to give you a feel of the book. Lots of illustration in them as well. Lots of Pradi, and Brits say proggy, right? Same thing. Very high pixelated sort of pieces coming up, whether you're pushing them down or you're pulling them up with the needle nose Prodi tool. Gosh, weird. I see a light in the backyard. I wonder what that's about. Oh, Jocelyn's on the trampoline with her phone light. What a weird thing. I thought aliens were landing in our backyard. That's absolutely what that is. So seeing some lovely examples of some early rugs and a great conversation that Lynne lays out for us on the construction and design of these early rugs. So lots to look at. I'm going to flip through because there's so much to get to in this book. This is a large book. And then we get, you know, she's hitting on, very comprehensive. She's hitting on a lot of rug designers who we know. We talk about not the low-hanging fruit, but like on this page she's got Elizabeth Lefort, the Canadian hooker, right, the fastest known hooker of all time so far, doing major, huge signature pieces like the Crucifixion, right? We've had shows on her as well. Lynne is really touching on a lot of different styles of hooking. Same page as Elizabeth Lefort. She's got a t-shirt, an all t-shirt hooked hassock, right? Beautiful. So a big variety of things that she's showing us. The next chapter she goes into materials, tools, and equipment. Now this is interesting for me because, again, a lot of the books that we see on rug hooking specifically are American-centric. And while there's nothing wrong with that, sometimes I feel like if we are only talking about American materials and techniques, we are a little bit limited, right? Because there's a lot more ways to hook a rug. Even if we're not talking about hooking, we're talking about one of the sister sort of techniques. Than we typically say in books that are American rug hooking books, right? We stick with cut your strips up with the cutter, right? Buy a frame, right, that has nice tight teeth. Get your milled wool, make it right. Whereas a British book talking more about materials, tools, and equipment will feel so much more liberating, in my opinion, to read, because Lynne will be talking about different materials and techniques than we often think to name, right? Much freer. So let me come back over here. I wanted to put a picture of Lynne in there, so she is super pretty, isn't she? You can see just a different style of working. This is something I'm going to return to. This is like a handmade frame or possibly a picture frame resting on legs, right? This is a large frame. In the US, we often talk about putting our backing, and the backing usually for UK rug makers is burlap, right? And that's another difference between UK and US. In the US, even you know, not counting Canada, because Canada is very burlap heavy as well. In the US, we tend to go for other backings, right? The backings that are a little bit more elite. It is absolutely up to each person to use the materials and tools that you like the best, right? Why wouldn't you, right? But it is nice to be reminded that there are other ways. So finding a big frame like this, propping it up on legs, it's probably more than that. It's probably attached very well. But it's almost like a sawhorse kind of thing, right? Leaning on it. This is how early hooking rugs, hooking bees were done, right? Like in somebody's kitchen, the thing propped up on the table, bunch of people working on it at the same time. When we talk about working in this style in the US, we often say like, oh, but how are you going to close the sides? How are you going to make the sides tight, east to west, right? And not just north to south. You don't have to, right? If it's taught enough and you're hooking, particularly hooking, right? Punching is a little bit more aggressive. But in this picture, Lynne is hooking with what looks like a beautiful kind of Hartman hook, or maybe it's one of those knob type hooks. If it's working and you haven't got tension east to west, only north to south, if it's working, you don't even question it, right? It's working. If it ain't broke, you don't fix it, right? That is one of the best adages when it comes to doing any art or craft. So interesting as we go along. It will be fun to look at different tools and different techniques. As I go through the book, I'm just looking at, for example, take one little sip. You know, I feel really bad that the green screen isn't there. Let me try one more time. Just give me 1 second while you take a sip too. I'm having lots of technical things today. Good thing they're only technical so far. let's do this. And hang on. I want you to see Lynne's book, preferably the whole time. So, oh, the magic of the green screen. Now, wouldn't you think the green screen would be one of those things at this point in life that's very, very easy to use? I got to get one of the curtain things behind me. This drives me crazy. Of course, I'm not in my studio. I'm at home. That's the thing. There we go. That's a little bit better. I just want you to see the book constantly, because if you love what you're looking at, this is the book behind me. As I go through the chapters, it is a lot of fun looking at the kinds of materials that Lynne is using, right? Because we're not talking about traditional rug hooking materials, but this book isn't about rug hooking. It is about lots of different techniques and more. Not just these 4, but lots more. So Lynne talks about in this chapter, which is about materials and tools, frames. Now let's take the time to look at this, right? Because this is a quite big difference, right? So she says, a frame will achieve and maintain tautness in your backing cloth, making hooking far easier. It must allow for periodically viewing the textile in progress, and its size must also allow you to reach the center of your work easily. Ain't that the truth? Have you ever experimented with working on a frame that was just too big, and you start to get a weird pain, like in the back of your neck or the middle of your back? You know what I mean? Because you're leaning in a weird way. You have to be sure that you're set up well, particularly with large pieces and a large frame, right? It's a lot of fun working on those kinds of floor frames, but you want to be sure that you can reach all the parts of it, because it's awful to get weird aches and pains while you're doing something that you love, right? So she's talking about really practical things, like just being conscious that if you can't reach the center, that's going to be a thing, right? You're going to need to shift the thing. In the picture that she's working on, it looks like she's got it on like a carpet tack, like a strip of carpet tack, not the sort of combs that we typically use in the U.S. Either one is fine. Tacks are fine. Upholstery tacks are fine. All of that is fine. Stapling it onto your wooden frame, also fine. Anything that keeps it taut is fine. If it's working, don't question it. So she's saying, to begin with, you may just want to try a simple, inexpensive wood canvas stretcher. So like a painting, like a painting canvas. These are available in various sizes, and your work can be moved along the frame as the section is completed. As you progress, you'll find it handy to have a variety of frames in different shapes and sizes depending on your particular project. Absolutely true. Quilting hoops, particularly when worked with fine yarns and thinly cut strips of material, can be ideal for jewelry and small projects. Square pine frames can be easily assembled and taken apart. So it's a much longer paragraph, but she's talking about how to get a frame quick, easy, inexpensive, right? And yes, once you get involved in rug hooking, you love it, you want to buy a frame, right? There's lots to choose from, right? I sell them, right? Everybody who has a business sells them. It might be that you're not a frame person, that you're a hoop person. It might be that working in this sort of original style of rug making, just tacking or attaching carpet strips to the frame and then just stretching your piece over it, right? That works great too. That works just as well as it always has done. We can spend, but unless you can afford it and you love the stuff that you're getting, if the stuff that you're getting is giving you stomach cramps because you're spending too much, look at a book like this and think about the other ways, right? The original ways that people made these beautiful rugs. They weren't ugly rugs. They were beautiful, right? Because these materials still work. And then she talks about rug hooks and the differences between different kinds of rug hooks. She uses terms for some tools like bodgers, that require translation, right? But it's easily done. You can easily figure out what the tool is. She talks about prodders, which are the proddy tool. I do want to make the point, having written that first book I did about all of the different, right, the easy, beautiful handmade rugs, not my title, but my book. I found out when I was doing that book that the proddy tool, the spring sort of hinge proddy tool in the UK is different than the one in the US. The one in the US that you can easily find, for example, on Amazon, the Woolery, all of these big monster type stores, the proddy tool that you get that's like a needle nose with a spring, is different in the US. It has a flat nose. And that means that you can't go through your backing and up again in one movement to pull something through, as in across. It means you have to go down and pull something up from underneath, right? The British spring tools for Prati have a tiny needle nose, like little porpoise nose, right? Tiny. And you can actually go into your surface up again and pull your cloth across, right? So it goes in and out right there. Has to be something like burlap. That's a loose weave, right? Otherwise it wouldn't work. But the American Prati spring tools will not be able to do that because they have a blunted top nose. If you have the tool, you're looking at the tool, you've tried this, you already know it just is absolutely impossible. So different tool is sold, spring tool, spring Prati tool, different between the US and the UK. That's something to just know, because you might feel like, why can't I do this? This is really frustrating. It's a different tool, altogether a different tool. And then Lynne goes into talking about cutting tools. And the first thing she says is, generally, my preference is simply for a range of scissors in different sizes. I just love that sentiment because it's true. Scissors still cut stuff. They cut great. And if you are a very technical person and you love the style of hooking where the hooking directionally is very important, the flow of it, the look of it, right? The overall finished look of it. You want your strips to be the same size. You want them to be equal pile, right? The height to be very proper, right? Everything done in a proper way. Technical people like to work in that way. You should. You absolutely should. Don't let me or anybody talk you out of it. I tend to work more like Lynne. I like seat of the pants. Now, if I'm putting a kit together for you, I'm certainly going to cut strips on one of my cutting machines, without a doubt. But when I work with me in the living room, right, all the stuff that I hold up and I say, oh, look I did this. 90% chance I didn't cut it on one of my machines because I didn't want to stand up because I was sitting in the armchair, right? It's so rarely that I get to hook. And I probably had Midsummer Murders on or something like that, Jonathan Creek, and I didn't want to stand up. And I just sit there and cut with the scissors as I go. And do you think any two strips, they're like snowflakes. There's probably not two that are alike. But the overall impression of the piece is that it looks fantastic, right? For technical people, they would look at my piece, or yours if you're more of a boho style hooker, puncher, rug maker, and say, yeah, it's not exactly perfect, right? But perfection only matters if it matters to you, right? It doesn't matter if someone looking at it has a different sort of aesthetic and their definition of perfect or a successful rug is different than yours, then you're not even speaking the same language, right? So when those kinds of things happen, right, you just say, thank you, right? Thank you, and move on in your head. Because the goal is not to be perfectly uniform and perfect unless that is your specific goal. There are thousands of different ways to hook. There really are. And that's just one of them, right? And the fact that Lynne is talking about working in a style that's a little bit looser, that requires less in terms of material tools and expensive supplies, this is a positive conversation because this craft started as a thrift craft, right? Leah, it's an incredible book. It really is. And she takes it even further, and she includes tufting in this. Da da da, it's like the Terminator. She's got the tool, the tufting gun. I swear one of these days we're going to do this together. It's no time yet. Maybe over winter we will experiment with this tool and start doing some videos. She talks about tufting, and I love that she's talking about tufting because it is absolutely a viable form of rug making, right? Absolutely. I think at this point, if you're watching this show and you're in this group of viewers who like to have these kinds of conversations and you've been here before, I think you're probably the kind of person who would agree that if you are doing your special, unique piece, it doesn't matter if you're holding a hook or a needle or a tufting gun. What matters is that you did what you meant to do and you're happy with the way it came out. We'll feel that when we look at your finished piece. We'll feel that your piece is part of you and it's holding part of your heart and soul in it. We'll feel that when we look at the piece. It doesn't matter what you are holding in your hand, right? Sometimes people say, oh, Tuft and Gun, it's not really rug making, is it? Well, it kind of is, right? How is it any less rug making than the shuttle thing, side to side, that came out at the beginning, end of the 19th century, beginning of the 20th century? How is it any different? For people at that time, do you think they said, oh, I don't know, is this cheating because you're using something that makes the work go faster? Of course not. They said, oh, is there something that makes the work go faster? Well, that makes a lot of sense. Of course I want that. Give me one of those, right? It's only lately that we've become so purist in our conversations about rug hooking specifically, but rug making in general, that we tend to be a little bit high horse about the different tools that are out there. So far, I haven't been super successful with the Tuft and Gun, but granted, I have not given it lots of tries. Or the shuttle rug hook, right? It's actually a punch, but shuttle rug hook. Different things for different people, and you need to put in the time to practice if you want to become more proficient with a different tool in your hand. So that's why a book like this comes in so handy, because it's showing us lots of different tools. So this is going to be one that's a bit different, right? And let's talk about this for just a minute, because if you get this book, you're going to go, ooh, what? And you're not British, you're going to go, ooh, what's that? It's a spider tool, right? It's a spider tool that's sometimes called the catch up. Is it called catch? What's the other name for it? Catch it, right? It looks like this, and if you're thinking, oh, that's a punch, it's not a punch. It has that second hole in it. So this tool is a tool that can be used if you've ever seen a rug that has a woven backing, but has like tiny little, what looks like a braid, but it's actually a chain stitch going all the way around it. The spider tool does that kind of work. The thing about the spider tool is it's now considered a vintage item. So you might find them online for sale. Definitely you will. But this specific tool does some really fun work, but it is very hard to find nowadays. What do you do if you fall in love with the chapter in this book that uses the spider tool? You can also do what is essentially a chain stitch on the surface of your woven backing, linen, burlap, whatever. You can do that with either a punch or a rug hook, right? Just so you know, oh, I don't have the spider tool and I can't find the spider tool. I can't find the catch it. In the UK, I think you'd have less trouble. In the US, it's pretty impossible to find. You can use your rug hook or your punch, so just know that, right? And then Lynne talks about punch needles, latch hooks. She even talks about locker hooking, needle felting tools. So let's come back to the slideshow. She's showing us some different styles of punch here. The one on the top is the sort of adjustable, the white one. We more often see it in like a light blue or pink color now. It is like one of the more sort of lower end punches. It works okay, but the metal in the tip is not really high quality. So if you're using burlap, you're probably fine, but if you're using a backing that's a bit tighter, like monk's cloth or rugwarp, it's going to be very hard to use that tool. It's just a bit of a lower end tool. But then we are seeing more of the Oxford style punch and variations on the punch. Amy Oxford was always the first to say that she did not invent the punch, right? There were many styles of punch, and there are many styles of punch. So when people say, oh, somebody copied the punch, the Oxford punch exactly, I'm sorry, I have to differ. That the tool has been there forever. Just because someone else makes one that's made of wood, I'm sorry, I don't feel the same way. That tool has existed and been patented in the 19th century. The Oxford one is especially nice, and I think the Oxfords are not the one on the far left, right, but the next two in. The Oxfords are especially nice because the handle is very comfortable. And the tips are made of, at the moment, right, they're not being made in Vermont anymore. The company was sold. So we'll see. That's a to be continued in my mind. But, hitherto, the tips on the Oxford punches, what made them exceptional, I thought, and it might be that it's the same materials. I certainly don't have any inside data. The metal was so good that the tips were fantastic, made it very easy to punch. Hard to rip, easy to punch, right? Which is just what you want when you're holding a punch. But it is good to know that there are different varieties of punches out there. Judy says the rug tufter looks intimidating. The Tuft and Gun, it is. It moves very fast. It goes very fast. the things about it that are tricky, it goes very, very fast. You really have to work vertically. It just does not work horizontally. You have to work vertically. And you know the thing about doing punch needle in general, that your working strand of yarn, whatever you're working with, that cannot get snagged or caught in anything, or else the thing just stops working, right? It's like malfunction. The alarm starts going off. It's the same thing with the tufting thing. You really need like some kind of an eyelet in the right place on your frame to keep that working strand away from your hand, away from your armpit, your shoulder, your hair, your glasses, your ear, anything that it might catch on. So technically it's fiddly, but once I think you get over those initial things, like you've got a huge standing frame, you bought one or you managed to make one, you figured it out. It is a question of standing up and working it like, I don't want to do too much of that on camera, right? I don't like that at all. But you know what I mean? It's different. You're standing different. Your posture is going to be different. I will say it does go fast. It can get away from you very fast, even at the lowest speed. But man, you can fill in backgrounds fast, right? You can fill in flat areas fast, just like that rug that she showed us at the beginning. Oh, Ruth, good to see you. Welcome back. It is a fun tool, but it is absolutely not for everyone, right? For people who love sitting, moving slowly, working slowly, having that hook in your hand, pulling up loops, looking at them, considering them, taking a minute to consider the whole thing. Is it working? Is the glint in the eye good enough? Is the corner of the mouth right? These are not things that you do with the tufting gun. So it really depends on what you mean to do. But if you mean to, in 2025, make a bunch of room-sized floor rugs, you might want to think about just walk yourself into it, getting comfortable with using a tufting gun, because that will be a great tool for those kinds of large-scale projects that don't have a ton of detail. It is good to look at a lot of, I love to see other people's collections of tools because I'm always interested in what they've got, right? Same with their wool. I'm always interested in what other people have got. So lots of pictures of Lynne's tools, stash, work area. And it is interesting coming from the U.S., looking at some of her stuff because it's a little bit different. These are the needle felting tools, right? And we've been seeing a lot of needle felting, either a single needle like the one that's laying on the foam mat. These are just different varieties of felting needles, right? You can get some with multi-needles. Sometimes they make me a little bit nervous because they break easy when you've got multis. You have to bear down with each punch pretty evenly, because if you, or keep turning your multi-needle punch, because if you keep holding it the same way and you're at an angle, and for example the bottom, let's use the word like tine, like it's a fork, keeps hitting more than the others, that one will break, right? So that's why I think when you see the single needles for sale, you see like huge quantities, right? There's like a pack of 20, and you think, how would I ever go through 20, you know? You do, because they break, right? So you want to be thinking about that and thinking about your technique when you're doing this. But we do see more and more people who are needle felting onto your piece, onto your backing, or onto your wool, or in the last coffee time we saw onto wool that would otherwise be like for cutting up and hooking with, felting right onto it. Wool will adhere to wool, right? So that will work great. And in this book, Lynne is also showing us different things, like you see that kind of purple schnoodle noodle. It's like twisted roving, right? It's twisted probably with her fingers. You could apply that very well with one of these needles to your rug hooked background or to your backing. And then she goes on to talk about the making process, and she talks about cutting strips. And this is so gloriously refreshing. We're not seeing a picture of a machine. Nothing against machines. My God, I have every machine that you can name, right? And sometimes I feel like using them. Sometimes I do, even for my own work. This is just a different style. Like I said, there's so many styles of rug making. In this photo of cutting your material, Lynne is cutting her material with a pair of scissors, right? And why shouldn't you? This is going to work great right? So she's got different scissors for different projects in this chapter on the making process. She is showing us different pairs of scissors and different widths for cutting different kinds of materials, in that case, sweaters. And here she is stretching and attaching backing cloth to the frame with a staple gun, right? And she shows the mitered corner, right? So sometimes I call that the envelope corner, right? You just tuck it in because there's more material in the corner. Tuck it in, get it in there tight, keep it out of your way, keep it even and taut. Boom, staple gun hits it, right? Right against one of these picture frames, wooden canvas frames, right? And then what are you going to do? It doesn't have legs, right? What do? You lean it up against the edge of the table, or you lean it up against a card table that you set up in front of the couch where you're sitting, or the arm of the couch, right? That if you're twisted, it's gonna get to you fast. But you lean it up against something, right? These are not Darwin type problems to solve. You have something that doesn't have a lap element to it. It's not something you can put on your lap. It doesn't have legs to go on the floor. Well, you rest it on something, right? Easy peasies, right? So I love these conversations. I love these photos. I love the variety that Lynne is showing in this book. And I'm flipping through many, many pages. She's showing chain hooking. So she shows prodding. She shows fleece and yarn sculpting. She shows, this picture first, chain hooking. That's chain hooking, right? That gives you that little chain that looks like a little braid. So you don't need to be looking for a spider, right? If they're not easily had, you can be doing it with a hook, and she's showing you how. She's also showing sculpting, right? With polar fleece or wool, if you do like Waldeboro style. She's showing you how to sculpt with a pair of scissors, right? Fantastic. Oh, hey, buttons. Oh, my little buttons came. And then we were looking at the section on, I'm going to answer that in just a second, Ruth. Latch hooking. And man, this is latch hooking at its best, right? Latch hooking, and this is a much wider gauge than we most often get in the U.S. Most latch hooking backing in the U.S. is 3 holes per inch. This looks like a larger scale to me, right? Which means if you're going to be doing this kind of super proddy 3-dimensional work, you can have these bigger holes, right? You can pull through larger materials. How gorgeous is this variety of materials? You can do polar fleece with this. You can do traditional yarns. You could put several pieces of yarn in. She is using the latch hook with the little toggle, right? You can put more than one knot into one hole, into one unit. You can. That's easily done. Lots of different, you can leave the ends wild and crazy. You can trim them. You can Edward Scissorhands mow them down, right? Lots of different effects that you can get doing latch hook. We are just used to, oh, is my man coming? Take a little break for a second. Come here, my sweet person. Sit right on the edge. You're making a cameo? Here, come sit down for a minute.
Just don't spill it.
There he is. There he is.
Hey.
Happy Friday, buddy.
Oh, thanks. School sucked today.
Oh, don't say bad words. That's like right on the edge. You want to say what happened in the class?
Oh, nah, I don't want to.
Come on, tell. Can you tell what happened?
I mean,
what happened the other day at school when you went into class? This makes me so angry.
My health teacher randomly grabbed out a gavel and started banging it on. Yeah.
Right. So Teddy's autistic, and he's like, you're not as nutty as you used to be, right? You got it together pretty good at this point.
Yeah.
But he went into health class, and everyone was a bit droopy and tired because it was first thing in the morning.
Hold on, can I get my water?
Yeah, and the teacher thought it was appropriate.
I love you.
Love you too. To open her desk drawer, take out a gavel, Judge Judy style, and start banging it. Wake up, everybody! Is everybody awake? I just thought things are very different than when I was growing up. You got lots of people saying hi to you, Ted. He loves it. He loves it. He doesn't feel so good about himself at school. You know what I mean? So when he comes and makes a cameo, it means a lot to him when people say hi, because he doesn't feel super popular at school. Things are not going particularly well. But I think it's absolutely absurd that a teacher would be banging away with a gavel. Shows absolutely no, I'm stopping. It shows absolutely no sensitivity to kids who have sensory issues, right? I sent an email to the school earlier. Um, I'm sure they understand how I feel. So anyway, thank you for those hellos. He's always happy to know that he's recognized, and he loves his little cameos. So back to latch hook. Um, I say this all the time. I think latch hook is really underappreciated because when you're using latch hook backing, you don't need any frame, right? You don't have to attach it if you don't want to. You can just put it on the kitchen table. Um, Thank you. I will tell him. He is awesome. Thank you so much. Oh, he's such a good boy. He's such a good boy. It makes me so angry when things like that happen. It makes me so angry. I'm stopping. I promise. I got to get this out of my system. But I said, he's not in the autism class. He's in the regular middle school. There are over 400 kids in his class. In his class. I don't mean in the middle school. I mean in his class. And I just feel like if they are not careful about the way the atmosphere in the classroom, and if they cannot figure out a way to limit the chaos and the noise, children who have sensory problems like autistic kids are not going to be able to do their best work, are not going to be able to concentrate. And you know what? They are grading them the same way they grade all the other kids. He's going to pass or he's going to fail. And he doesn't have a chance if the teacher is whacking away at the desk with the gavel. I mean, obviously, like that's so obvious. I'm stopping. Let me go back a little bit. I know, I want those beautiful curls too, Kathy. I never had that. Okay, now Ruth, I remember you said earlier, can you use the same backing used for tufting guns as for regular punching and hooking? Great question. I would say with a tufting gun, right? The main difference in using a tufting gun, it plugs in, right? It's mechanical. I don't mean the shuttle. I don't mean that. And we'll talk more about those. We should talk more about those because they are making them again, right? So that's a great tool. The actual tufting gun that plugs into the electricity on the wall, right, and it means business. The thing about that gun is I would eliminate linen because I think it's a little bit, no matter what linen is, I think it's a little bit too fragile, a little bit too brittle. Have I seen people using a tufting gun in linen? Yes. I would not want to use linen that way. It is the most expensive of the backings. I would feel nervous the whole time I was working on a piece that sharp tip was going to bust a hole through it, right? Other people have done it successfully. Great. Personally, it would make me very nervous. The most common backing for using a tufting gun is monk's cloth. It's not my favorite backing for using a tufting gun. My personal favorite backing is rug warp because rug warp, 100% cotton rug warp or poly, but cotton is the most common, is less expensive. It's still a woven, right? It's super thick. It is you could try to drive your car through a sheet of rug warp and it wouldn't give, right? It's not going to give to the tip of the needle. Monk's cloth, right? Beautiful, and that is the most commonly used thing. But I just feel, again, it's very thready, isn't it? You punch the thing and this is all the threads, it's thready. And I have seen holes in monk's cloth, 100% cotton also. But in my opinion, rug warp, cotton rug warp, is thicker and it's more durable. And when I'm doing something as aggressive as using a rug making tool that's plugged into electricity, my choice would be 100% cotton rug warp. That's my opinion. But again, you look at videos on tufting and you see most commonly people using monk's cloth. I do have to say that I wonder, just with this sort of throwaway culture, a lot of people who talk about rug tufting and even make videos on rug tufting have not done other rug crafts. And I would venture to say, I am not on my high horse, but I would guess that just judging from watching some of these out of curiosity and maybe ghoulishness, I would say it's very clear that a lot of people who have huge channels have not done other rug crafts, right? And I'm not sure that they realize there are other choices, right? I feel like sort of beating a dead horse sometimes with the monk's cloth. Some people love monk's cloth for punch and hooking. I have to say, I only use monk's cloth personally when I'm doing something, because it's so beautifully white and clear. If I'm doing a pattern that is super involved, my first choice is monk's cloth. I know you can get like bleached linen, right? You can get like linen that's perfectly white, but the linen is more textured too. And I feel like I can't see the details of my lines if my lines are crazy, but on monk's cloth I can see them perfectly. So when I work on monk's cloth, comes out great, just like all of the backings, but I find personally that I enjoy it the least because of the little threadies and pulling things in and out, and it is tight, not as tight as rug warp, but tighter than linen. Um, it's personally my least favorite backing, but I would say in general, if you put punching and hooking together, it is the most favorite backing fabric. So it always has to be up to you. You always have to make good decisions. But I would say if I were approaching rug tufting for the first time and I had my choice of materials, I sell all of the backings. I would definitely go for rug warp. And I would say number 2, monk's cloth. So I'll have to do a video with this conversation and show you punching. I'll show you using, because I have both the large rug tufting frame that is like as big as, well, bigger than the wall behind me, and then I have a smaller one which is still like bigger than any TV screen that's ever been made, but not as big as the big one. So I will, and in fact, I said it today because the frames are in the garage right now. And I said to my husband, I said, gosh, I'd really like to get the small frame into this little studio room here. But right now with finishing up the book and stuff, I just have to plow through another few days putting the book together. And then I think I'll bring the small frame into this room and start recording some videos on using the tufting gun. I have a few tufting guns, so I might put one of them like into Teddy's hand or Jocelyn's hand and just try to fill in a background so that you can see me doing it. Not that I'm an expert, but you can see what a fool looks like while they're doing it, right? Because I do find it hard to handle. And it does make me a little bit nervous, right? Things that move fast, like, I mean, even the iron makes me a little bit, I mean, anything that I can hurt myself with these days makes me a little bit nervous. But I bet Teddy will be way more, it might be his thing, it might be his thing. It tends to be, this is ageist, but it's mostly younger people you see online who are doing it. There's no reason for that. There's no reason for that because it's heavier than any other tool you can name for rug making. But I mean, it's not like holding a cannon, you can hold it even if it takes 2 hands to hold it. Yeah, let's cover all that like in a month. Let's say in a month, let's do that and have that be like the theme of a couple of weeks, is just learning more about that tool. And certainly here, Lynne is talking about the tool too, and she's giving a great account of the pros and cons. Black Thread Studio. Oh, I love getting kisses from him. I just love both kids are so affectionate, particularly him. It's like having a boy cat, isn't it? They're always more affectionate than the girl cats. But Joss is very affectionate too, Melanie. I love my rug warp. I use it for everything. Yeah, rug warp is tight. I do too, Melanie. I just love it. Rug warp is tight. So if you like to hook with anything, I'll say 5 and up, right? You're going to feel it more in your hand because it is tight. So be careful about that. It's great if you hook Lynne Stein style or punch, and you like to use different things like little bit of sock yarn, little bit of mohair, little bit of number 5, maybe number 6 strips, but not the whole thing. You can get number 8 strips into it, but your hand will hurt, right? Because it's that tight. But if you're just doing a little bit, it's manageable. So I like it for that because I rarely do a piece that doesn't involve several different kinds of materials. And the rug warp is great for that because it holds the thin stuff really, really well. So Lynne is talking about latch, different finishes, different types of stitches that you can do. No, I don't, Karen. I'm not at the moment stocking the Scottish burlap. I probably should stock it again. I stopped stocking it probably because of peer pressure. And it was a while ago that I stopped, and I shouldn't have stopped for that reason because I love burlap. I'm going to say it. I love burlap, and I often use it. I use it for important projects. I use it for book projects. And let me show you something else. While we're at it, let me show you something else. Hope that doesn't fall. I ordered burlap in lots of colors, right? I'm not going to be able to use them for this book because burlap comes in tons of colors, right? I think it's Fabric Warehouse. I'm going to do future Halloween projects for the next Halloween book. on burlap and have some of the background showing, maybe even paint some of the background. It's kind of a slate gray, bright pumpkin orange, grapey lilac. It looks gray in the picture, but grapey lilac, and kind of like an inky grape jelly indigo color, right? And there's tons of colors of burlap you can get. This stuff is fantastic to hook into. And then you don't have to worry about fabric. I think Fabric Warehouse, again, I got this. Not expensive, beautiful colors. You can have a little bit of the background showing. Give it a try. Give it a try. I wouldn't put it, down on the floor for a rug on the floor, but if you're doing wall pieces, might as well save some money on your backing fabric, and it feels great to hook into this stuff. If you're wondering, is it super rough? It's not, right? It's rougher than other backings, but the colored burlap, this colored burlap I just showed you, it's really not rough. My hand could be rubbing against it, hooking. It would not be a thing. You can always put on a little pair of cotton gloves, right? One little cotton glove, right? Not even a pair, just the one. But this is not rough. This is not rough like regular burlap, or even like Scottish burlap is a little bit textured. That's much less textured. Karen says, I adore Scottish burlap. If you ever get more, yeah, I'll get a bolt and I'll start stocking it again. I think I kind of chickened out of stocking burlap because, being the underdog and the new person in the craft, being only 4 or 5 years into it. Let's not start that Coven of Witches stuff, right? But yeah, a lot of people just constantly saying how crappy burlap is, and I kind of caved and said I'm going to stop stocking it. But I'm using it myself, right? I continue to use it myself. So Karen, I will definitely let you know. Michelle says, I just bought a burlap pattern this weekend, my first time, and I do enjoy it. It's so forgiving, right? It's so easy to put. I have the least problems with my hand when I'm working into burlap. And if you're an absolute beginner and you don't know why anybody would say anything bad about burlap, it's because we know historically now that burlap does rot. It can rot if it gets wet. But if it's not down on the floor, getting your wet boots and your wet feet every time you walk through, then it won't rot in 100 years, right? 50 to 100 years, right? There are rugs that were on the floor with a burlap backing. I have many of them that are still alive, but they are vulnerable if they are on burlap if it gets wet. So just know that. People went to other backings. There's nothing wrong with burlap. Judy says requesting. Oh, Kathy's question. Did I miss Kathy's question? Let's see. Karen, Melanie, Leah, I'm hooking in burlap now. Kathy says, oh, I'm sorry, Kathy, you said, if I'm hooking with yarn, I prefer rug warp, but trying to use a 7-cut wool, okay, yeah, and rug warp is tough for me. It is. It's just too wide to pull through. It is a nice kind of high luster, almost waxy feeling luster on the surface. It's very tight and polished, it's easy to look at. It's great for fine cuts and for yarn. But Kathy's absolutely right. Anything, I'm going to say, again, 5 and up, and some people would even say a 4. If you're doing a huge piece, it does get to you. You need to take a break. You need to work on something else because it will, depending on what your situation is with your hand and wrist, it can get to you. But if you do sort of medium or smaller cuts and or hook with yarn, right? If you hook with yarn, it's not going to be a thing at all because yarn is not flat like a ribbon. Yarn is like cylindrical. So even, hey, if you're pulling through bulky yarn, it'll probably get to you. But if you're pulling through like worsted weight, even like Briggs and Little 3-ply kind of weight, it'll be fine. You could do it indefinitely, in my opinion. Oh, did you say something? Oh, wait a minute. I missed some stuff. Let me just sneak back. Kathy, how is Scottish burlap different than regular burlap? I don't know. It is luxurious. That's all I know. Regular burlap is very hairy. I wish I had some right here to show you. That stuff isn't regular burlap. That's like the colored stuff, and that's fancy. Regular burlap is very coarse. It's very irregular. Right, the fibers that make up the burlap, it's utilitarian. It's meant for sacking, right? The fibers that make up traditional burlap are not refined. So if you think of each strand in the burlap, if you were to unravel it, right, the edges are unraveling and one piece comes off, it's like lumpy bumpy like this, right? It's not refined, it's not spun, it's burlap, right? It's like knobby and coarse and a little bit hairy. So you put that into fabric, right? The fabric is very coarse. The holes can look slightly different, right? As you look, I mean, none of them would be big and gaping, right? It's all fine to hook. But you get some parts that are very tight, almost fused together, and you get other parts where the holes are better and easier to get into. But it's the threads that make up the weave are irregular by nature, right? They are not refined. That's why they're able to produce it so cheaply, is because they're not refined. That extra step isn't in place to spin them really well and make them pretty equal, right, and even, so that the weave is even. Scottish burlap, and I don't know how Scottish burlap is made, but when you look at it, it looks more like linen, and it's very even. It's much softer. I wouldn't say that it's hairless, but it's a lot less hairy. So it's like Scottish burlap is much more expensive, more on a par with like the fine rug hooking backings, right? But it does have that ease, that looseness of traditional burlap, but it doesn't have the things that rug hookers traditionally dislike about burlap, like it's coarse and it hurts and it's scratchy, and it's very irregular and lumpy bumpy. So it's a more refined. It's still a burlap weave, but it's a more refined threads making it up, if that makes sense. Beyond that, I don't know anything more than that, and I'm basing what I just said on having used Scottish burlap and thinking, wow, this is more like linen than burlap. These threads are very, very fine and regular. So that's as much as I can glean in terms of a comparison. Gail says, you are no underdog. Oh, thanks, Gail. I'm getting there, man. I'm getting there. And Leah says, I love hooking into burlap. Judy says, okay, yep. And now let's see. Sorry about that. And Karen says, Scottish burlap is much like the UK backing called Hessian. The threads are almost polished. Yes. Hessian also can be very coarse. It depends on what kind of Hessian. So same thing as with burlap. Hessian is burlap, but it's the British burlap. So Brits will say Hessian instead of burlap. And it is rough and coarse, although you sometimes get pieces that are more refined. And I think the more people do crafts, right, the more we're seeing different qualities of burlap. I think one of the reasons we're seeing in craft stores, even big box craft stores, more of the polished looking low end burlap, right? So not Scottish burlap. But for example, you go to Michael's or Joann's, in those stores, more and more, you see burlap really wide, bolts that are 64 inches, whatever, really wide inches, or really small. High quality burlap is because people have been using it for weddings, don't you think? I mean, that's what I think every time I go in. I go, why is there so much nice burlap hanging out at Joann's? Well, it's because it's been like a huge trend for people to use it for weddings and decorating. And they're not using it for crafts. They're using it as the finished product. So it looks nicer. Now, that wasn't the case 10 years ago. That's for sure, right? You'd see burlap that was like interchangeable with sandpaper, right? You try to hook onto it and you're going to cut your hand open. Just kidding. Not that bad. But I mean, it is different burlap that we're seeing now. We're seeing lots of different grades of burlap. And just like with yarn, right? And I'm totally deviating. I got to get back to the book. But just like with yarn, for example, if you ever go to a place where yarn, I'm trying to think of the word, mill, where yarn is being made, right? And I've done videos where I go to some place like the place in Vermont, and I tour and I watch the machines and I watch the product and follow the product that's going from like bag of cut sheep wool, right? Just on the floor, vegetable matter, and it hasn't been sorted, hasn't been sifted, beginning, right? Sheep is the beginning, and then pile on the floor, beginning, to this beautiful yarn. You see all the different steps in between. Now, if you think about it, the yarn becomes very expensive because it's been refined. It's gone through X amount of steps. Sometimes you get wool in a different form. For example, roving, right? It is refined, right? It's brushed, but it's not been twisted into yarn. It's still loose, right? Like puffy cotton candy, it's still loose. You could break it in your fingers, right? It hasn't been twisted into yarn. That step hasn't happened. So typically it's less expensive. Bat, which I got to show you this real quick. I got to show you this. I've been getting these bats online and I love it. There's lots of different people who sell Bat, B-A-T-T, and it is 100% wool. But some of the ones I'm getting have like that Angelina, you know, the shiny stuff in there. I'm going to show you what this looks like. This is less refined than roving. It has had no spin to it, right? It hasn't been spun or twisted at all. That step hasn't happened at all. What happens with Bat is the wool is taken in strips, and this has been finished by somebody like on Etsy, right? You see all that Angelina, and it looks like this, right? And it's like a sheet, and you pull it open, right? And it's like cotton candy. And when you want to hook, you can even find like, oh, I right now I really want this orange piece. I'm going to grab this orange piece, or I really want this purpley piece. I sit there and hook with this stuff, and I literally go like this, right? Like cotton candy, and Bat is the least expensive of all in terms of how much weight, how much wool there is in Bat. And you're thinking, can she rug hook with this? I've been rug hooking everything with this. I put it in my hand, I pull it out a little bit like this. You know what I'm doing right here? I'm refining it myself. If you have a drop spindle, you can drop spindle it and work it more. Mama doesn't have the time for that, right? I'm just going to go ahead and do this. And you see how it's lumpy bumpy, right? The more I kind of pull at it and fool with it, and I tend to do this part underneath my frame while, can I have some water? Thank you. While I'm hooking, right? I don't tend to do it here. I do it under the frame while I'm hooking. I just feel that there's like a lumpy bump coming up, right? I go from like this to like boom, and my hand underneath just kind of twists and pulls. And sometimes I'll do stuff like that just to give it a little bit of twist, a little bit more refined. But the more I twist it, the more I'm refining it, the more time I spend doing that, the more I have to charge you. And when I say Ariane, do you have time to put this back in here? I'm the worst, aren't I? Super demanding. I've got all this Angelina all over me. The more the man has time to do that, and that's from this Gargoyle Lover, right? This is one of the people I buy my bat from. All different colors, all different things in it. Here, can you put that in there too? The more I touch it, the more I work it, the more processes I do to it, the more I have to charge for it, right? Because it's more time. Same thing with burlap. The more work and time that's gone into the fibers and into the making of the weave, the more they have to charge for it. So, is it possible to find varieties of rug hooking backing fabrics or rug making backing fabrics that work great and are not super expensive? Yes. Burlap is still an absolutely viable and worthy option. Just remember that there are lots of different kinds of burlap. If it is more refined, you're going to really enjoy working with it. If it's very coarse and hairy, you might enjoy it less, but you might not even, it really depends person to person. It is possible to do this craft inexpensively. That's the point, and that's one of the great points that Lynne Stein makes in this book. It hasn't been spun, Carol. Exactly. It hasn't been spun. That's it. Is it more? Okay, hold on. Scottish burlap. Okay, and Kathy says, is it used more in Canada? Kathy, I think, as far as I know, most, if not all, of the Scottish burlap is coming out of Door Mill. So they're buying it from somewhere, right? Because they don't mill anything anymore. They're buying it from somewhere. But it might be that the Woolery sells it too. But the most common place to get it is Door Mill. So no, it's not particularly popular in Canada. It's just as popular here. It's just, if you use it and you love it, it is on a par with other backings, right? Because you're getting to that kind of cost. So it's just if it's a good personal, if it's a good love match, people tend to get it again. Otherwise, it is on a par with a lot of the other backings, and it is very similar in terms of its properties to traditional like rug hooking linen. But yeah, it can easily be had here. In the UK, I don't know if Scottish burlap is a thing. The backing that I see UK artists using is the coarsest kind of burlap backing. Um, Louisa, remember I did the show, she sent me the rug. Louisa, it'll come to me at 3:14. She sent me that beautiful rug, right, that I loved of hers. It is on the coarsest kind of burlap, right? So it really depends from person to person. It becomes a preference thing for sure. Judy, oh shiny, I know, isn't it good? It's so much fun. Michelle says, isn't it just the best? It is the best. It's my favorite thing to hook with. It's so easy, soft, pulls through easy. The only downside of hooking with that bat is the back of your piece. I was looking to see if I had any right here. No. The back of your piece is just about as filled with wool as the front. I feel it goes very far, hooking with it, I feel it goes very far. But the back is very, very thick, right? And when you turn it over, it looks like there's just as much wool on the back, which is sometimes like, ooh, I wish I could get more of it on the front and less of it on. It doesn't work like that, right? You have to be careful when you use it if you're using it on a frame. You have to think about that press and seal, you know, that like plasticky wrap stuff that clings. I use that when I use it because I do not want to put my backing on the frame. Do I sometimes put wool bat, something that's hooked with wool bat, onto the combs of my frame because I'm too lazy to stand up? Yes. Has it ever pulled anything out? No. But I live in fear of stuff like that. It's not impossible that it might someday. I don't think pull it out, but rough it up. You know what I mean? And I don't want to be roughed up either. So, all right, let's keep going. Sorry, that was a massive detour. Okay, come back over here. All right, come back over here. We got lots to see. See, this book is a great conversation starter because the reason we're having these detours in thought is because Lynne is giving us in this book so much to think about, to look at, to consider, and we haven't even begun to scratch the surface, like not even close. This is in part of the book that's called Embellishment, and she's just got, I just got to show these pages. She's got some crazy stuff happening here, right? She's got some crazy daisies happening here. And this is where I am right now over on this side, right? And she's showing you, she's using netting and she's calling it scribbled net, right? So you can see this is not hooking, right? This is a different look. This is an embellishment, a sort of little pucker, right? A little burst, a little flower burst, a little star burst of netting. How beautiful is that? The texture that it gives, right? Amazing. All these great ideas. She talks about scribbled net by saying white and cream polyester, nylon net, and certain synthetic lace fabrics work best for this process. Use fabric crayons and markers applied directly onto the fabric. And by fabric, she means the netting. And by netting, she means tulle, right? For us in the US, this is tulle, Tuule. Netting is much more coarse, and the little holes, right? The little holes that make up the netting, or the negative part of it, are much larger, right? Tulle is much tighter, right? You see much more of the material, much less of the holes. So this is actually tulle, from what I can see. Applied directly onto the tulle. Make random marks with your colors, leaving enough of the fabric blank to contrast. Fix the scribbled design by applying a hot iron to the reverse of the fabric, according to the manufacturer's directions. Cut pieces for pradi from your fabric with scissors. Because of the nature of the fabric and the unpredictability of the marks, you will find that you can achieve a lovely ethereal quality with scribbled net. So scribble refers to coloring on it with crayons, right? And of course, crayons are wax, or they have a wax component. And when you hit them with the iron, right, and I would put a press cloth in between, when you hit it, also because the tulle is 100% synthetic, right? Put a press cloth, like a little handkerchief or a little thin fabric, even a piece of quilt fabric in between. scribbling refers to the drawing onto it, and then when you apply heat to the waxy crayon, right, it's going to do like bloop, bloop, bloop a little bit and make it really shiny and melty. And what a great idea. And then do proddy with it. In other words, prod it down or up, depending on which tool you're holding, right? The needle nose or the standard proddy tool, the pokey one. Great idea. Lots of ideas like this. This is what I mean. This book is just loaded with so many original thoughts and ideas. And she's talking about heat bonding here, using leftover papers, threads, tiny fabric offcuts, sequins, small beads, all kinds of things that you can bond, right? To enable these to bond an assortment of plastic-based materials such as bubble wrap, laminating pouches. I know your mind is being blown right now, right? Plastic bath scrubs and other waste material can be used. On top of a thick towel and a sheet of nonstick baking parchment, create a layered, of course, parchment paper, right? Another thing that you can iron through. Create a layered sandwich of these materials, strategically arranging the colors and the shapes. Make the work slightly bigger than the shape than you ultimately want. So she's talking very specifically about this, but you can see she's basically fusing stuff together that she will then use as an embellishment. Is she hooking with it? No. She's embellishing with it. This section is about embellishment. She's going to attach it either with proddy, like the scribbled net, or she's going to attach it with a needle, right? Here, let's go another one in. I got to pick up my pace a little bit here. My mouth was running too much. Securing the outlined shisha mirror. So applying mirrors, right? We see this a lot even in the U.S. Grace Collette, right? The great Grace Collette, the infamous Grace Collette. All of the shows that we've done with her in person, looking at her work, all of the different materials she uses. She uses a lot of these mirrors. She loves them. They add so much light, dimension, interest, and sparkle to a piece. It's just another kind of embellishment that you might use. So she also talks about finishing, a chapter on recycle and upcycle. I'm looking at some stunning images that you are going to love when you get this book. Zeros VR. Madison from Mississippi here. I hooked some netting. I cut off a blouse recently and it turned out really well. That's great input, Madison. Thank you so much. You know, that's so smart to say, because we were talking about prodding with it. You can also hook with it. You can absolutely hook with it. And talk about inexpensive, right? It's like $1 something a yard. So much fun to hook with, because Lynne's word, ethereal, right? When you hook it, it's like, it has this ghostly see-through quality to it. But you do see the color. The more layers you've got bunched up, the more you see the color. But talk about beautiful texture. Adding color, adding texture, having choices of colors, because netting is not going to dye well, like not in anybody's world. I like the scribble technique with the crayons. That does do well in patches, right? Not for overall color change, but think about all of the different colors you can find tulle in at any craft store. It's lots, and it's even more online. This is a piece that Lynne did. It's called La Mer, the Sea. Lynne Stein, 1990. This is the detail of a larger piece that would be 50.5 by 49.5 inches. This is gun tufted, largely recycled. I think it's other stuff too, because I'm seeing raised boobies, right? It looks like trapunto. Largely recycled fabrics and fibers on polyester backing cloth. So I'm guessing that the polyester backing cloth is a variety of rug warp. I would bet that it has to be. It has to be. So back to that question, do you use the same backings, right? In the UK, it'll be a little different again. I don't see people from the UK saying, search for the monk's cloth, search for something really expensive and use that for backing. If you can find other kinds of materials that are called rug warp, get a sample, right? Get a sample and look at it. Oh, shoot. You know, I wish, there's something else I want to show you. Hold on 1 second. Hold on 1 second. Hey, buttons. I got it. I got it. I got it. I'm coming back over. Hang on. I got to show you something here. So, Linda Schultes Hoffman sent me some fun stuff this week, including her pieces for the rug book. Now, I want to show you this here. She sent this little snippet of backing, right? This looks like, yeah, this is definitely poly backing. This is some kind of poly rug work, right? And she sent a little snippet of this. It's kind of brown in color. And she said, what do you think? I got a whole roll of this for like a whole bolt of it for a stupid amount of money. It was like nothing. And she said, do you think it's going to be good? The first thing I did was stretch it, right? You want it to have a little bit of stretch. That's what the wrong monk's cloth doesn't have. No stretch, no good. So she sent this little tiny piece, right? And I couldn't really do much with it, but I'll tell you what I could do with it. Let me see if I can show you. I went like this to see if it would work, and I've got just stuck my hook down, and it's tricky, but I was pulling up a few loops, and guess what? It works incredibly well. Now, would it work equally well for anything? Of course, I'm not in a frame or a hook or anything right now, but I managed to pull through quite a few little loops, and I can see that it works great. And the main sort of property that it needs to have to work great is, oh, Kirsten, good to see you, is that little bit of stretch. It has to have that. But you can see even without a frame, it's no problem pulling up just a few loops in this thing. What's the reason I wanted to show this to you and talk about this? Sometimes we don't know, we see backings that could work for rug hooking, and you think, wait a minute, it's not one of the heavy hitters, it's not one of the big guys, it's not one of the words that I've heard before, it's not going to work. It might work. It might work. Give it a try. It might work, right? That's something I would say that people in the UK and Canada are better at instinctively deciding. Like, this looks like the stuff I use. Why don't I get some of that and see if it works, right? And I'm nothing against Americans, obviously. I'm one of them. But it is fun, and the more experimental I get with materials, right? And books like this are definitely helping getting experimental with materials. The more confidence I have to try stuff that I don't know what it is. I don't know what the content is. I don't know what this is called, but it works for rug hooking, right? Would it work for a tufting gun? I don't know. I think it would work great, actually. The holes might be a little too small. I don't know. You'd have to test it. But interesting, right? Kathy says, I ordered something record from Door, a backing labeled mixed linen. Oh, interesting. It's lighter in color, but not as white as bleached linen. Is this Scottish burlap? No. Scottish burlap would have to say Scottish burlap. Completely different. No. They sell, Door sells lots of different kinds of linen and mixes, right? And it's worth experimenting with all of them because they all have different properties. And to be honest, at least for me, going from one backing to the next, unless something is glaringly wrong or difficult, like it's way too tight, it tends to be fairly interchangeable for me. So I do tend to go for the less expensive backings. And I do tend, now that I'm a little more confident, right, I do tend to go out on a limb and try other stuff when I see it. Just buy something and say, I'm going to see if it works. If it works, I'm going to buy all of it, right? Michelle says, you all have fun tonight. Farm chores, time for you there. Have a beautiful weekend, you too. I'm going to keep going here. Let's see. Hang on. Let me come back over here. You know, I can save some of this for when Lynn comes on with us too. So, all right. So we were just looking at her piece, which is absolutely beautiful, on a polyester backing cloth. So it could have been similar to what I just held up there. And she says, always working from the reverse of the backing cloth. The tufting gun enables both relief, convex shapes, and compact mosaic-like surfaces can be achieved. Interesting. I would never think this was tufted with a gun, right? So this makes everything I ever thought and said about a gun Remember, this is a very large piece, but yeah, kind of moot because she's got quite a bit of detail in here. I think she is an absolute master. Um, but remember, you are when you are using a punching gun, sorry, a tufting gun, it is a punch, and you are working from the reverse, and you do want to peek at the other side from time to time, make sure things are going okay. You can control the height of your loops with a tufting gun. So she's saying like, you know, enables both relief and convex shapes, right? You can get some stuff that's higher up, some stuff that's lower. Another interesting thing that you could do with the tufting gun, right? Singing the praises of the tufting gun. If you have some high pile, you can clip part of your piece and not others. You could clip the whole thing, right? There is such a thing as like a tufting gun for that does like for a clipped surface and one for looped surface, right? But you could cut your loops, right? You could also do that. You can do that in rug hooking and punch too. If your loops are tall enough, you can cut your loops, right? And have the best of both worlds. Um, interesting. Interesting. Here, let's keep going for a minute. And if we get too late, um, I'm just going to save for the next time. Oh boy, I'm seeing some stuff that I want to share everything. But I bet some of you are going to order Lynne's book, as you should, because she deserves to make a bunch of sales on a book that is so generously all encompassing and forthcoming in its messages about tools, materials, and so many diverse projects, right? So this is a circular chair pad, and this is done on latch hook backing, right? So it looks like a Rhea rug. Why does it look like a Rhea rug? Because the pile is so high and because the material is luxury. It's like a luxury material, right? It doesn't look like the pre-cut acrylic. Nothing wrong with that, but it doesn't look like that. Well, it's not that, is it? Interesting. I just want to show you, hold on one second. I want to show you this and then I just noticed something else. In this chapter, she's showing you, it is pre-cut, but she's pre-cutting it, right? So it's not the stuff that comes in those little round wrapper things, nothing wrong with that. But if you already have your own yarn and you love it and it works great, all you need to do is figure out how high you want your pile for that section, do an experimental piece or two and say, like, you know, Goldilocks and the Three Bears, like, this one's too low, this one's too tall, this one's just right, right? And when you figure out what's just right, you get a piece of cardboard and you wind like this and then you cut. And then you've got some pieces. You see she's got some pieces on the table behind her. I just noticed this and I didn't notice it before. This photograph of the leaves in the ground with the yellow leaves making the hearts and things. You see the two hearts here? That seems to be the basis for the really abstracted because of the height of the pile, the circular piece, right? So cool. What a great idea. Really, really creative. Here, let me see. Let's do a couple more and then we will log off. Oh, another great project. So there are tons of projects in this book. This one's called Embroidery Hoop Portrait, and this is done with a punch needle. She puts this cute border on the actual hoop. She finishes the actual hoop, but nice little project that is all laid out for you using a punch needle. Of course, she adds on little buttons. She ties a little bow and adds a little bow on too. But she's showing you all of the techniques, including gluing the pom-pom trim to the border. She's showing you everything. But I just love the expression, the girl. You expect to see the face of a little one who's like, you know, smiling like an angel, and this one is a little bit disgruntled. It's more like a real child, isn't it? I am going to, because we still have a bunch of slides, I am going to put a thing in the book. You know what? I think I will put this in the book. So I know where we left off. And next time we pick up the book, we can actually maybe hold it for when we talk with Lynne in person. There's so many more techniques. And we can use the second half of the book to talk to her about these different projects that she's got. The fact that we went off course so many times during this episode is absolutely a testament to the fact that this book is loaded with techniques and new ideas, right? The reason we kept chatterboxing was because these are a lot of things we don't talk about or we haven't heard before. This is exciting. This is a book that is definitely worth getting. She has done a great service to the rug making community in general in making a book that appeals to all rug makers. But even as someone who is particularly focused myself on rug hooking, I can see how all of the techniques and the projects in this book are very cohesive and translate to things that are within my wheelhouse as specifically a rug hooker and an occasional puncher, right? Interesting. It's the kind of a book that stretches you creatively. I think you're going to find that you are grateful for the hoarding that you have done over the years of your different materials and things, magpie style things that you've picked up that shine and glitter. I think you're going to be happy that you kept all those things, because when you see a book like this, you say, oh, yeah, yeah, I have that. I'm going to do something similar. That's a great idea. Oh, my stomach is starting to hurt. I made it through the show, though, didn't I? I made it through the show. It might not be an easy. It might not be an easy night. April says, "Thank you, Deanna. Love this book. I love this book too. We will definitely come back to it." And like I said, I've been in touch with Lynne. She is absolutely lovely. She's busy, a little bit busy right now, right, with the book and everything, but she will come to us sooner rather than later. We just have to nail down a time when the time difference will make sense too. So she's lively and wide awake, and she feels good about what she's saying and what she's sharing, right? And puts herself out there in the way that she wants to be out there, not when it's the middle of the night. So we will do that sooner rather than later. In the meantime, remember, I posted a new class, the Season Sampler Halloween Edition. That will be a fun drawing and composition class, reading poetry, looking at old postcards, coming up with ideas. I will guide you through each design, right? I have an idea of what each design is supposed to be, and then you put your own spin on it. It's for people who love drawing. It's for people who want to try working on their own compositions. It's for people who love to sit and listen, particularly to a show that will be solely about autumn and Halloween, right? So that is on the calendar. That is recorded. If you can't make it in person, the whole thing will be available for you with everything in it. So that will be there. Remember, the book club is coming up next week. The Indigo Girl by Natasha Boyd, B-O-Y-D. That'll be fun to sit down and talk about that on, what do we say, Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's coming up. Tomorrow, I keep forgetting to say tomorrow, in case you are local, I have a lot of appearances coming up soon. And I never think to tell, but we'll talk about that next time. I have a lot in the next 2 months, like a crazy amount. But tomorrow, I'm going to head out to Woodstock, Connecticut, to Donna Swanson's place, Whispering Hill. There's a hook in there tomorrow, right? So if you are local, you might want to go. If you're a beginner, you might want to go. I will drop by. I don't have the time tomorrow to stay and do a lot of hooking, but I need to pick up some rugs from her. And I just wanted to give her a quick hug. And I'm going to stop by for a few minutes. And if you will be there, or if you think, ooh, Woodstock, Connecticut isn't that far from me. I'm on the Rhode Island line, or I'm somewhere else in Connecticut or Massachusetts, right? Right above it. It's tomorrow. I think 10 to 2, I think she said. Whispering Hill in Woodstock, Connecticut. So I will pop in there for a little bit of a little while just to say hi if there's anybody's there who I know. And then I've really got to scoot because I've got a lot going on. We're going to try to go to the Renaissance Fair on Saturday, which means if I'm taking a day off, I've got to get some stuff done in other time. But I will see you all soon. I'm working like crazy on all of our projects. I have so many things to announce, to share. Thank you so much, especially to Patreon supporters who support this channel. The Patreon link should be at the bottom of this video. I couldn't do it without you. And Patreon members, I have another email that should be coming to you over the weekend with some more interesting stuff. And I'm always sending Patreon members special free patterns, things like that, as a thank you for supporting the brand Ribbon Candy Hooking, for supporting these shows and all of the things I buy to put these shows together. And I've also been starting with the first one, our first book that we did for the book club, The Sewing Machine, remember? I've been doing a free pattern specifically for Patreon members. So they received the first one, which was for the book, The Sewing Machine, and I'm working on the next pattern, which will be for the Indigo Girl. So all kinds of perks that Patreon members get, and it's all scalable. Always appreciate you, appreciate your help, and love all of the projects and the time that we spend together. Have a great weekend, everybody. I will be back with you on Monday. And yeah, if you need me in the meantime, Ribbon Candy Hooking